Y'all tell I'm channeling my inner Claudia with this makeup. Nothing nearly as extravagant as she does, but it's fancy for me. So the Netflix adaptation of The Babysitter's Club is perfect. So I want to talk about what they did, why it works, what they changed, what they kept. This is going to be very stream of consciousness, so just bear with me, because I have a lot to talk about. I have loved The Babysitter's Club since childhood. I have not read every book in existence because there are a lot of them, but I have read a lot of the books, and I've seen the movie, which is interesting. It takes a path. And I've also seen Stony Brook Revisited, which, if you haven't seen it, is a fan-made web series that imagines the girls in the future as adults, and it's amazing, and I think every self-respecting fan should watch it. But I had seen a while ago that Netflix was in talks to make an adaptation of The Babysitter's Club, and I was nervous because I was like, this can go one of two ways, and I really hope it doesn't go the second way. I read ahead of time that Alicia Silverstone was cast as Christie's mom, even though at the time I thought that was interesting casting. And I read when they announced who was going to play Watson, and then it just kind of fell off my radar, and I wasn't actively searching for news about it anymore. And then, you know, worldwide pandemic happens, and I just assume that it's been, you know, pushed back with a lot of other things. And then, the eve of July 3rd, my mother comes into my room and she says, do you know there's a Babysitter's Club series on Netflix? And I'm like, wait, what? Like right now? Like I can watch it now? It's out? And I binged the whole thing in one night, and I cried. I cried so much. I cried at nearly everything. And now I'm sitting here saying Alicia Silverstone is the only one who can play Liz Thomas in the world. They did so many things right, and I needed to sit down and compose my thoughts of how they did it right, because it's phenomenal. It really is. This could have gone so wrong, and it just went so right. So there are some small things that unfortunately I'm going to have to spoil just for the sake of discussion, but I'm going to try my hardest to keep the things that happen in the show that you may actually be interested in seeing for real. I'm going to try and keep those on the down low as possible, but as far as just general knowledge, they've been canon for 30 years, Babysitter's Club things, you know, if you don't know by this point, you snooze, you lose, and I'm sorry. So structure-wise, the show is very simple. It doesn't do anything fancy. So it's a 10-episode season, and they are directly basing each episode off of the first 8 books in the series, as well as Super Special number 2. So we got Christie's Great Idea, Claudia and the Phantom Phone Calls, The Truth About Stacy, Marian Saves the Day, Dawn and the Impossible 3. Hang on, this is where I always get messed up. Claudia and Mean Janine, Boy Crazy Stacy, Christie's Big Day, and Babysitter Summer Vacation, which they rename to, instead of Camp Mohawk, it's Camp Moosehead. Wait, is that right? Hang on. For some reason, I've got it in my head that Christie's Big Day is 6 and Boy Crazy Stacy is 8. Where's Wikipedia? They did switch it around. They did switch it around. Okay. They put Christie's Big Day into the 8th slot so that we could end it on a more emotionally well-rounded note before they go off to camp for the super special, because the whole series starts with Liz announcing to the Thomas family that she and Watson are getting married. So that's a nice way to almost bookend the series. Season! God, I need to stop calling it a series, because if I do that, then we won't get more seasons. And we need to. Now, obviously, they can't keep absolutely everything that Martin wrote, because you're compiling a 15-chapter book into a 30-minute episode of television. You just can't do that. It's not possible. So I noticed the books that they were based on, where they were a little more complex, they really tried to focus more on the B plot rather than the initial problems that the girls would have with their babysitting charges. So for example, in episode 2, Claudia and the Phantom Phone Calls, it's less about the phantom caller and definitely more about Claudia trying to go to the Halloween dance with Trevor. And actually, that episode contains one of my very few complaints in that, not that I think the episode was badly done, because I think it was a really good way to properly introduce Claudia to the audience, but the fact that it's based on a book called Claudia and the Phantom Phone Calls, and the episode is titled Claudia and the Phantom Phone Calls, and Claudia herself never really interacts with the Phantom Caller. Just a little thing I noticed, but, you know, a couple episodes later I totally forgot it, and I was like, oh my god, I love Claudia Kishi so much, I'm gonna die. I think that the writers were really careful about what they kept from the original material and what needed to change. I think they were really thoughtful about that. And the things that they do change, they change with purpose. For example, and this is going to take a pretty big spoiler here, but I think it's necessary to talk about, in episode 4, Marian Saves the Day, which is based on arguably one of my favorite books in the series. I love Marian. I think she is the closest sitter to me in personality, and I'm very attached to her, and that book is not only her first narrated book, but the book in where she really comes into her own for the first time, and that's really cool to watch. So in the book, she sits for Jenny Prezioso, who is just a brat in general, and she gets strep throat and a high fever, and Marian has to call 911, and they take her to the hospital, and it's a whole thing. In the episode that is based on that book, Jenny Prezioso is not present. Instead, Marian is sitting for a little girl named Bailey Del Vecchio. And you can instantly tell that this is a new character, because even if we never see them on screen, when the girls are in meetings and getting calls for babysitting jobs, we are constantly hearing names of famous families that these girls have sat for. Papadakis family, the Radowski family, the Marshalls, the Newtons. Jackie Radowski, your walking disaster, do you know I would die for you? So because they are being so faithful to the original material, you instantly know that this is a new character that they have added for the TV show. And Bailey is lovely, as far as we can tell. Marian gets along great with her, but it turns out that Bailey is transgender, and when she gets that high fever and ends up being ambulanced to the hospital, the doctor and the nurse who come in to see her keep referring to her as a boy because they see on her chart that she is labeled as a boy. And Marian gets pissed about it, and she takes them out into the hall, and she calmly but expertly explains to them that misgendering Bailey is making her incredibly uncomfortable and is making her feel insignificant during this whole thing. And you can see little Bailey, like, my god, I can't tell how young she is, but she is a young girl. And you can just see her on the bed. She looks like she's melting as the doctors come in, and she's just like, she doesn't want to be here having this conversation. I mean, she's sick. We all know this. She's already not feeling good, but just listening to the doctors talk about her in that way is just making her feel so much worse. And the only thing that she can get out of her mouth at that point, and you know, she's a child, she is really not supposed to talk back to doctors and other authority figures anyway, but the only thing that she can get out of her mouth at this point is, I don't want the blue one, when she's talking about the hospital gown that the nurses found for her. I'm getting emotional. God. And so Marian, my girl Marian, takes them outside and just lays down the logic on them and just gets that stand-up moment. And I'm just, back here weeping and clapping my hands like, that is my girl. That is my girl. I'm okay. Where was I? Oh, yeah, and just bouncing off of that, it's so gay. Now sit back in your chairs for just a hot second, because as far as I can tell, none of the main club girls have been confirmed one way or the other, but there are multiple adults who are gay and have gay partners. The Johansons, they made the Johansons gay, and Charlotte Johansson is adopted, and it's beautiful. Dawn's dad is gay, and that's the reason that he and Sharon got the divorce. And she FaceTimes him, and he's got this, like, really hot boyfriend. The girls meet multiple kids their own age that just casually mention that they're interested in someone of their same gender, and it's the coolest thing. And once again, little Bailey, who, I don't know, maybe she looks 5 or 6, something like that, but she is transgender, and she is played by a transgender actress, which is the biggest, like, mind-blowing moment of this whole thing, if I'm perfectly frank. But it just makes my heart so happy because Anna Martin is queer, and I hope, I pray that it's making her little queer heart as happy as it's making mine to just see all of this normalized and just as a total non-controversy. People just don't care. They don't bat an eye. It's normal, and it's so cool and validating to see that. I'm getting emotional. Oh, also, race bending for the better. Marianne is half black, and Dawn is Latina, and a bunch of other people are now people of color, and it's fantastic. I have a page of notes down here that I'm looking at. The characters actually look their age, which is phenomenal and also a little bit mind-bending, because when I was reading these books in grade school, for the most part in the series, the main officers of the club are 13. And when I was a little kid, let me tell you, because I read those books so much, I thought that 13 was just like the peak age to be. Like, when I reached 13, I was gonna be the it girl. Like, I was gonna have my life figured out. I was going to be an adult. And then I got to 13 and I'm like, what the crap? I'm still a child. And they have communicated that brilliantly. Now, all of the girls, I think, are still supposed to be 12 at this point, but, you know, 12, 13, it's practically the same thing. But they look their age. They look tiny. Particularly Claudia. Claudia is like this big. I can fit Claudia in the palm of my hand. We have all been subjected to one too many, like, CW or the ABC Family shows back when that was still a thing, where technically younger characters are played by actors that are maybe a little too old to pass for that age range, and it just warps our expectations of life. But these girls are their age. Oh yeah, the parents are fun. The parents are really fun and interesting, at least from my recollection in the books. The parents weren't really that interesting to read about or even watch them interacting with their children. Like, I was definitely interested in the Richard and Sharon rekindling romance arc in the beginning, but after that, like, the parents were just kind of background white noise. Like, I wasn't interested in them at all. I don't know, maybe it's just like I'm at an age where I can appreciate them more, or maybe the writers have just actually made them fun to be interested in now. But they're really cool, and they're a big part of the show as a whole now. And that's just really fun, and it adds a new flavor to this whole beautiful Babysitter's Cake. I love how they have clearly set it in the modern day. And, you know, all the girls have smartphones and the internet and stuff like that, personal computers and things, but they still manage to hold on to some physical things from the 90s that just make this series so warm. Like, it feels warm, and it feels, you know, like just a group of girls in the neighborhood got together to do this. It doesn't feel like, you know, an organization. It feels honest, and it feels like they're doing this out of love. And that's really contrasted with the babysitter's agency when that comes into play. The fashion in this show is to die for. These little 12-year-old dorks have better style than I do. And honestly, the thing that is just the cherry on the cake, that they got Christie's turtleneck and pullover sweater addiction down pat. The details, the attention to the details and wanting to get everything so right is just admirable. It's phenomenal. Like, one thing that you will read in almost every Babysitter's Club book, regardless if it's even narrated by her, is that Claudia loves Nancy Drew books. It's never really relevant at any point, but you always know that Claudia loves Nancy Drew. And you can actually see in her bedroom where she has Nancy Drew books displayed. It's, oh my God, it's so good. Stacy wears a pump. This, oh my God, this may be the best change of them all. I'm not sorry. I love this so much. So Stacy has diabetes. It's like a core thing about her. In the books, you know, it's the 80s and 90s. So she talks a lot about having to give herself insulin shots. But now, you know, it's 2020, technology has evolved, and people can wear these little pumps now. And you get the stickers, and you stick them on your stomach, and you have to wear this, like, pump on your belt or in your clothing or something like that. And there's this brilliant scene with Stacy and her mom where she's at some store trying on clothes, and like she's trying to find things that will cover her pump, and at the end, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to spoil this, but it's just so good. At the end of the episode where she comes to terms with it and she's not afraid of it anymore, she bedazzles her pump and she starts wearing it as like a fashion statement, and it's so, oh God, I love it so much. I love it that because of the way technology has progressed, like, it's better. She doesn't have to stick herself with a shot anymore. But the trade-off is that she has to wear something physical on her person at all times. And that creates a whole new set of problems that she has to deal with. And oh, it's a writer's dream. So as I said, they pull from the first 8 books and the second super special pretty directly, but they're also not afraid to start pulling things from later books that either just make for a more interesting story or things that they know the audience is going to be a little bit antsy for. Like Logan. They introduce Logan, albeit very quickly, in the very first episode, even though he doesn't come in until book 10. And he's slowly woven in through the whole season. And I think that was actually really smart. So they're just cherry picking the good bits and sprinkling them among the stuff that they already know they want to happen. And it creates this beautiful, rich, dynamic environment that these girls are navigating through. I love that the episodes are narrated by the girl they're focusing on, as is with the books, because all of the books are written in first person and they're narrated by a specific girl. And in the show, they have these little lines of narration that are said by the focus girl. It makes it really cute, and it just adds that little sense of like, this is how it's supposed to be kind of thing. It's the care. It's just another level of care that they've sprinkled on to this beautiful cake. I keep referencing a cake for some reason, and it's such a small thing, but it's just like, hey, we know you love these books. We're here to take care of you. It's okay. And I'm just like,
yes, 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 Rachel Sugared, I believe in your vision.
Mention that, mention that, mention that, mention that. No, honestly, the really only true inconsistency that I can find with this show is Dawn's brother Jeff just doesn't seem to exist. Like, they keep showing these really cute scenes with Dawn and her mom just having some, mother-daughter time, and I'm like, where's Jeff? We've all been told since childhood that Dawn had a little brother named Jeff. Where is he? But honestly, at this point, I'm not even real mad about it, because at least to my recollection, Jeff never really had much of a personality. And also, for the reason I just mentioned, I love this rapport that they have created with this new version of Dawn and Sharon. It's not even really a new version. It's just like these incarnations of them and how they're so close, and Dawn is really having to be the voice of reason a lot of the time because Sharon's kind of like all over the place, and they're just so warm with each other, and you can tell that they're really close. And I feel like if they had added Jeff in from the beginning, it would have just thrown off the vibe of, I think, what they were going for. I'm not even really mad about it, if I'm honest. It's just an inconsistency that I noticed, and I am letting y'all know. But honestly, that and the stuff that I mentioned about Claudia and the Phantom phone calls, where the two themes never really seem to intersect, those two are probably just the biggest differences that I think seasoned fans will find questionable. Pretty much every other change that they've made to the show has been, if not for the better in general, then at least for the better of this vehicle of telling these stories. And there's a lot that I didn't mention because I want you to watch this for yourself and experience the magic with me. Obviously, I had to spoil Marian Saves the Day because I just think it's such a phenomenal episode, and I love that they made those decisions. They didn't have to. They could have kept Jenny Prezioso and the world would have kept on spinning, but they didn't. They went with Bailey instead, and they brought out this whole other element to this story, and I'm... Okay, I've gushed enough about this. I need to go. But I just had to tell you how this adaptation works and why it works and why it's great. And they honestly haven't changed that much in the grand scheme of things. And I credit that almost entirely to Anna Martin's style of writing, how she is so consistent in giving you all of the information you need about every character, even some information you feel like you don't need, and crafting this world with such detail and love, and making these characters so well-rounded. Really, all they had to do was give them smartphones and make it a little gayer and a little less white. That's all they had to do. And it worked! Should probably pop up Mike and Ike before I do anything. Ooh, lemon, that might be dangerous. Oh! Now, back in my day, Mike and Ike didn't always used to be this intense. Good lord. I wanna be your sledgehammer. Why, yes, I did wear my cat shirt in this video just to spite Lane Cummings. I'm so glad you noticed.